Hello there everyone, welcome back to Russia in Context once again. I am here up on Ulica Kasigina. I've got the Park Pionierov here behind me, and we're not actually going there today. This is a place that we're going to visit in the future. We're actually going to be going across the street here as soon as the light changes, and I'm going to show you a few things, two things in fact, that I really like about Moscow, and then two things which or only one thing which I'm really not a big fan of. But let's cross the street here real fast, okay? Okay, so now that we're across the street, took a little bit longer than expected. That's okay. I'm going to, I guess take a look right back there. We've got, this is the start of Prospect Vernadskого, one of the, I guess you'd call major thoroughfares from the center out of the city. We are going to be taking the escalator gallery down, and we are going to be walking into the park Zakaisnik Voробyovi Gory, and that's where this will all begin in earnest. Oh, and also, yeah, I did get a new haircut. Thanks for noticing. That was very nice of you. So here is the escalator gallery. I'm going to turn us back around here. So this is all technically part of the metro system. The escalator gallery for a long time was abandoned when I first came here in the 2006, if you should all know that. This was just in complete disrepair, was unusable. It looked like a horror film, something along those lines. Nowadays, it's just an escalator. So we're gonna take it down, gonna go fast forward here, and then we get down to the bottom, we'll continue our little discussion. Okay, so now that we are outside again and we're in a park, I guess let me start by telling you one of my favorite things about the city. And if you couldn't guess from this video, then maybe it was pretty obvious because of where I filmed the last video as well. One of the best things about Moscow is its parks. For a city that is, I'm just gonna say 15 million people, I know the official estimates are a little bit lower, but when we count in maybe migrants or people who live outside of the city but spend all of their time working and shopping in the city, then realistically this is 15 million people. And for a city this large, it is incredibly green. There's just no getting around it. Everywhere you go, there are parks. In fact, one of the things I really love when it comes to cycling is that there's actually a green ring around the city. So I've actually made a few videos here where I've shown some of the cycling on that ring and talked a little bit about some of the sites along the way there. But yeah, Moscow's just incredibly green, and it is fantastic. Like I said in the last video, I really love getting away from the hustle and bustle of the city, even though maybe I'm not out in it as much as some of the other people who are working in the center every single day. But that said, it is just nice to be able to walk out of your house, walk 5 or maybe 10 minutes, and then be in a park. And that's pretty much the case everywhere in Moscow, with the exception of maybe the center. The center is obviously lacking parks, but once you move out of the Garden Ring, but 100% once you get outside of the third ring road, then you're going to be getting into the territory where it's just parks everywhere. So parks, 100%, one of the best things about Moscow. There's no denying that. For a city its size, it is one of the greenest places you'll find. I don't know, maybe in Asia, if somebody's been to China or Japan or any of those other sort of Asian mega cities, and you can tell me that they're also very green over there, I would be very interested to hear that. But in terms of Europe, first of all, there's just no other city in Europe the same size as Moscow. And yeah, Moscow's just incredibly green. It's actually one of the features of a lot of former Soviet cities. When they were planning things in the Soviet Union, they always made sure to put a lot of green space in the cities. Now, that is, without a doubt, one of the best things about Moscow. The other thing that I really love about Moscow, which is actually probably more important, is up here, so I'm going to turn this around. So, as we walk here, we are going under the overpass of that Prospekt Vernadskoe, which I showed you when I was up top before going down the escalator. This whole park, like I said, Park Voробyevo Gory, it's been here for a long time, but they just finished fixing it up a few years back. So for all of the people on the last video who have, like, I don't know, Sobyanin tramp stamps or just raging hard-ons for the mayor's office, like, I get it. He's done a lot, and I was not attempting to change your opinion on that. The only thing I was complaining about with the curbstones was that sometimes it feels a little unnecessary, and that maybe the money could be better spent elsewhere. For example, like here, when they fixed this area up, it used to be just such a shithole up here, and now it's completely presentable. It's a place that you can walk, it's a place that you can ride a bicycle, it's a place that you can come on scooters. We're going to talk about scooters in a little bit. But anyway, so right up ahead, you can probably see, well, maybe not yet, it's a little dark, a very familiar symbol, which is one that you come to see all over the place in Moscow, which is that red M. And maybe not a huge surprise, the red M is the metro system. Now, we're not actually going into the metro system because I don't have anywhere to go on the metro, but the metro system, and in general, the transportation infrastructure in Moscow is really what makes it one of the best places. Again, in Europe, I'm sure Asia has also lots of really good ones, but when compared to the States, there's no competition. It is so nice to be able to just walk out of your house, be able to get on a bus, get on the metro, or whatever else it might happen to be, and just get anywhere in the city. Sure, it's a little bit longer, but if there's traffic, not necessarily. And even if it does take you a little bit longer by public transit, ultimately, it's only going to be about an extra 50% of the time. So if normally by car it would take you 40 minutes, it will take you 60 minutes by public transit a lot of the times, which when you factor in the need to find parking, and parking is now quite expensive in the center if that's where you're going, then it's kind of a win-win situation to leave the car at home. Do we have a car? Yeah, we do. But if we don't need to use it, we don't anymore because it's just really super convenient to use the metro or, like I said, any public transit. What I will say, back in 2006 when I first came here, and after I first moved here in 2009, probably gonna turn the camera on because I feel like the sun is blasting it right in the face. So I'm gonna turn the camera back around. continue with the story. So when I first came here in 2009, or moved here in 2009, public transit was still really good, especially in comparison to the States, but it really sucked in comparison to what it is now. The situation was back then that you had different tickets for different modes of transportation. So if you wanted to take a bus, you had to get a bus ticket. If you wanted to take the metro, you had to get a metro ticket. If you wanted to take a tram or a trolley, they had special tickets for all the different types. They did combine tram, trolley, and bus into a unified ticket at some point in time, but it took them a long time still to get the metro. Nowadays, all public transit is on a unified system, and it just makes it so much easier. In fact, in the last year or two, they went ahead and they added the elektrichkas, which are these commuter trains, which take you outside of the city. Commuter trains, that's what they do. And yeah, now you can travel from one side of the city, literally outside of the city, to the other side of the city for the same amount as a regular trip on the metro. So we are now, this is Metro Most. This is, I can't really show, you can see the reflection of the clouds, but inside there is the station Vorobyovo Gory, which is on the red line of the metro. It actually runs up to the university, which you can't see. And are those rain clouds forming? I hope not. We can look out over the river. This is one of those bridges. It is a pedestrian bridge. You can cross it. It really just goes from the park over to Luzhniki. Now, Luzhniki is the largest stadium in the country. It was where the 1980 Summer Olympics here in Moscow were held. It's where, if you've ever seen the famous image of the bear floating up, "До свидания, наш ласковый мышка, возвращайся в свой сказочный лес." I think that's the song right there. That was there. And then when obviously FIFA was here in 2018, that was where they held the final and a bunch of other stuff. So it's the big sports complex where you have that right there is the swimming complex. It's just a nice big territory for people to do sport. Again, hey, Sabyanin, the mayor's office, they actually got there. They figured out what they needed to do, and they fixed up Luzhniki, and now it's just like a great place to be. That sound that you just heard was a metro train passing, and yeah. Okay, so we talked about transport and why it's so great, and we talked about the parks, although I do want to say one thing about the parks. For as awesome as they are, and for as much as I love them, I'm gonna, again, switch this back around. We're spinning all over the place here, but that's all right. Let's switch this back around to Vorobyovo Gory. Okay, so look at this nice green expanse. Vorobyovo Gory is actually a zakaznik. Zakaznik is basically a protected natural area. A lot of times you find them out of the cities. Vorobyovo Gory here is the only zakaznik, to my knowledge, in Moscow. Lesny Ostrov is a national park. Kolomenskaya is, I think it's just a UNESCO World Heritage Park, but Vorobyovo Gory is a protected natural park. Now, the problem I have, we're just gonna keep crossing the bridge here because I want to get over to the other side. The problem I have with Vorobyovo Gory, and this is, I guess we could say, maybe indicative of some complaints I do have about the park system, because you know how it is. I just like to gripe. That's just me. So, what don't I like about the park system? Sometimes the city overdoes it. With Vorobyovo Gory, you can't really see it now in the summertime with the leaves everywhere, but when autumn hits, you begin to notice it, and that is they installed just an ungodly lighting system on the hillside there. And Vorobyovo Gory is supposed to be a protected natural environment, but like you've jammed it full of bright lights, completely ruining the natural habitats of whatever birds and theoretically nocturnal animals would inhabit that place. So it's like, I'm glad that they fixed it up, but then at the same time, you have a situation where, oh, there we go. We got the train. So there's the metro. We have a situation where by doing too much to the parks, you also potentially destroy something which makes them special or important, right? Like, again, if it's a protected area, you're not supposed to go in there and dick around with it too much. You got to find a balance. That said, I'll flip back around here. A really good example of this would be Park Gorkova, or Gorky Park is its most famous. When I was studying here in 2006, Gorky Park, it's famous. It's world famous, Gorky Park. If you know anything about Moscow, you know about Gorky Park. And when I was studying here in 2006, I was like, I have to visit Gorky Park. So I had been here for probably a month or so. I was a little bit more confident of going out and exploring the city on my own. And I went to Gorky Park one afternoon, probably early October, I guess I would say. It sucked. It was an absolute shithole. And I, no respect to the park. Because you went in and nothing was working. There were, amusement park, dumpy little amusement park rides all over the place, beer tents, and then tir. Tir is just like these cheap shooting galleries, like you would see at a state fair in the United States. So, anyway, with, I guess it's been a while since I've been over here. You can't really just exit into Luzhniki. So, well, I guess we'll go through it. Anyway, continuing the story. Fast forward a few years, after Luzhkov, former mayor of Moscow, Yuri Luzhkov, after he left office, or was maybe forced into retirement, or politely shown the door, and he was replaced with current mayor, Sergei Sobyanin, one of their first, not methods of business, one of their first courses of action, one of the first things they did was they redid Gorky Park, and they put a lot of work into it, and they made it a very modern and very fun place to be. And it was, those first few years after they changed it, it was just it was the coolest place to be. All right, we are actually going to go through security here, so I don't know, I might have to stop filming, but I'm going to try to film the whole way through, so I'm just going to beep. Nope, I'm going to stop right now so that they don't get at me. Okay, we're through security. We've got the giant water park swimming center here behind us, but we're actually going to be going this way, back towards the river a little bit, because, I don't know, I like the river. Yeah. I was talking about Gorky Park and how when they changed it, those first few years, it was fantastic. It's still a good park, don't get me wrong. I will probably go there at some point in the summer, make a video, but one of the reasons I'm not planning on doing it right now is because A, there's large-scale construction in Gorky Park right now with the riverfront area, and B, I kind of hate Gorky Park these days. So after they redid it, it was wildly popular. It was the only park that they had redone in the whole city, so it kind of became a central point for, especially in the summertime, for outdoor activities and things like that. They've since redone a lot of the other ones. Luzhniki, I think, was the next one in line after that. That's all I can remember. It doesn't matter. It is so ungodly crowded. In the wintertime, it's super busy because they have the ice skating rink there. Super fun. If you like to ice skate, go for it. But just to go walk around, well, you can't really go walk around in the wintertime. I mean, you can, but why would you? Anyway, summertime, it's just so ungodly crowded. You can't ride a bicycle there. There's too many people. I'm not a roller skater, but you can't roller skate for the same reason. You can't really, I mean, if you just want to walk around, that's fine. But I like to go to parks to get away from the oodles and oodles of people. And then you go to Gorky Park, and it is literally just, you're surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands of people, and I don't know. Just not a big fan of it. I will get there at some point in time, but yes. I kind of lost the thread of what I was trying to say there. I'm gonna switch the video back around so it's a little bit more interesting. I kind of lost the thread of... Seriously? No, of course, it's this tractor. I kind of lost the thread of what I was trying to say there, but ultimately, when it comes to parks, I just don't want the city to dick around with them too much, especially if it is a park that is not necessarily meant for recreation in the, maybe the most general sense of that word. If it's just a park that's supposed to be a green area, that's fine. Update the paths, add some additional lighting. Not too much, mind you, but you know, put a little bit of work into it, but don't really touch it for the most part because, again, when we're talking about Moscow, and I said this in the last video, and I mean it, and I'll stand by it regardless of whatever anybody says in the comments. One of the nice things, one of the best things about Moscow, going back to my first thing, is that you can actually go to places here in the city where it is a forest. It's literally straight up forest. Bitsevsky les. I mentioned Luzhniki Ostrov before. These are all just straight up forests within the city. There's actual wildlife there. You can actually see moose in the city of Moscow if you go up to Luzhniki Ostrov. And I actually think Bitsevsky has some too. I'm not entirely sure on that. But yeah, so Vorobyev is the same story. I would prefer them to stop quote unquote improving it, but I guess we'll see. They just not long ago did a whole new ski complex in there, and they I don't know, they ripped out a bunch of stuff. I actually haven't been there in 2 years at the bottom down there, the embankment part, because last summer they were doing work down there and they had it all blocked off. You could not get through because of all the heavy machinery that they had brought in. And again, when you have a what do you call it, like a protected natural area, dumping in a bunch of heavy machinery and just ripping up a bunch of stuff feels like maybe something you shouldn't do. I said I was just going to complain about one thing, but here I am complaining about stuff with the parks. I don't know. When I was in university, I worked in the parks department. Look at story time here, just me going. I worked at the parks department for a few summers, and where we worked, we had a very, not hands-off approach, but it was more like a, we were trying to preserve as much of the natural landscape as possible, and in places where the natural landscape had been destroyed, we were actually trying to put it back because, you know, like, bring the natural environment back into the cityscape. And here in Moscow, I feel like a lot of times they have a wonderful natural environment, and I really hate to see it get torn up and disrupted. So, the last thing, the main thing I actually wanted to complain about, not the parks, nothing like that, although, you know, there's always going to be little gripes that we have with all sorts of stuff. The main complaint is actually, and I think here in Luzhniki, you're not going to see any of them, so I'm not really sure why I came walking in here, but the electric scooters. Yeah, I don't think they're allowed in here. Thankfully, I guess that's probably logical. So, starting about 3 years ago in Moscow, a number of companies started introducing these electric scooters that you could rent and ride around the city. And I think it was during COVID when they first were introduced. Oh, wait, no, there's one, but that's not one of the rental ones. That is a, I guess, privately owned one. So, the first year, there weren't that many of them around the city, maybe 10 or 15,000 in total, which, you know, across a city like Moscow is, it's not so much. You can actually see one right over there. There's a purple one parked and waiting. With each year, though, they've increased the number little by little until, I think this year, at the start of the season, I think I saw like 50 or 60,000 across the whole city, which again, when you're talking about a city the size of Moscow, that's not that much. The problem is that there is basically no regulation with them. So anybody can set up an account and anybody can start to ride them. You don't need a license, and that has led to a number of problems. I don't know anybody here in the city. I mean, I know there are people who ride them and enjoy them, but most people who walk around the city and just, you know, go about their business as normal, they're not a huge fan of them. Oh, here we go. This is, yeah, here they are. So there actually are a ton of them here. We'll go over here and then, so let's just bop over here. Yeah, right, you can see we got 4, 5, 6, 7. There's an electrical bike over there as well, but there's like at least 12 or more just hanging out over there. So the problem with the electric scooters is that they go pretty fast. I think 15 kilometers an hour. which, sure, isn't fast, but I'm gonna sit down now. 15 kilometers an hour isn't fast necessarily, but for example, when I'm on my bicycle and I'm riding 15 kilometers an hour, I'm working. I'm like putting in work, and it's a speed that, while possible to maintain for a long period of time, requires you to constantly be pushing and constantly alert. Like, you're just fully clocked into what you're doing. I have seen people on electric scooters sending messages on their phone while they're like zipping around through pedestrian traffic. And that's not great. Now, yesterday there was a news announcement that Yandex, Whoosh, and the third company, I can't remember what it's called, Ugrent or something like that, Urent, they are going to be introducing some fine systems for the scooter rental thing. One of the biggest problems right now is that you're supposed to be 14 or 16 in order to ride the scooters, and you will see like 10 and 12-year-olds just out there zipping around. And so one of the things they're going to do is they're going to introduce like a 10,000 ruble fine if you activate the scooter and then you give it to a child. There's going to be a 5,000 ruble fine if you are riding with 2 people on the scooter, because it's only supposed to be 1 person at a time. They say it's a safety reason, which it probably is, but I also think it's more of a monetary thing on their part. Like, it wears the scooter down a little bit faster, but also it prevents 2 rentals by, you know, having 2 people on 1 scooter. And then there's some other, like a 500 ruble fine for not leaving the scooter in the correct location, because you will just find those scooters in the middle of the forest every once in a while. You'll just be walking, and there'll just be an electric scooter, bam, in the middle of nowhere. So, will these fines actively fix the problem that I'm complaining about? A little bit, I guess. Getting some of the kids off the scooters, getting people to be a little bit more responsible with them will probably fix some of the issues. What ultimately, though, is the problem is that there is no place for people to use them. So if you're on an electric scooter, you're not in the street, right? You are on the sidewalk. And even though the sidewalks in Moscow can be very, very large, there's usually lots of people walking on them. You have young mothers with strollers, you have people walking dogs, you have kids just walking around. And yeah, when you add electric scooters zipping all over the place in the summertime, you're gonna have accidents. In fact, there are hundreds of accidents with them every single year. And yeah, not a big fan of the electric scooters. In fact, I would say even more than the curbstones, which I know I'm not a fan of the curbstones and the unnecessary placement of them, but if I had to choose between the curbstones and the electric scooters, I would rather see something more serious and like a bigger step taken with resolving the problems surrounding electric scooters than the curbstones. Wild take, Muscovites, if you're watching this, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think as well. We're gonna move on here. And this video is getting a little bit longer than I intended it to be. So I am going to cut it off here with a view of the river. And I know with the sun, it is probably all bleached out, but I did not plan for the sun today. I'm not that forward thinking. Hopefully, if anybody here watching agrees with what I say, then I'd love to hear that in the comments. If you have some constructive criticism, I would love to hear that too. If you're just, you know, I don't know, rage commenting and it's pretty clear you didn't understand what I was going on about, I guess go for that too. I'm gonna ignore those types of comments moving forward in the future, or just delete them. That's probably the best course of action. But yeah, I'm gonna try to do these more in the future. I hope I wasn't too rambly. I know this video is probably like over 30 minutes long, but there was a lot of stories to tell. I tried to show you a little bit. I hope crossing the Metro Most bridge was kind of interesting. I know quite a few people don't actually know that that's possible, and I just think it's it's one of the easiest ways to get across the river here. Otherwise you have to like go I don't know. It's the easiest way to get across the river in this area. We'll talk another time. I hope you enjoyed some of the views here of Moscow along the river and up in Vorobyovo Gory here in the summertime. I'll wrap it up there. This has been Russia in Context. Thanks for watching.